Welcome everyone. Thank you very much for joining this Alliance Manchester Business School Professional MBA Programs webinar. My name is Lewis Jackson. I am one of the Senior Marketing Recruitment Officers in the MBA Marketing Recruitment team here at Alliance Manchester Business School. I'm just going to apologise very, very quickly because I do have a bit of a cold. So I'm going to try and talk as slowly as possible so you can understand, but I apologise if I start coughing at any point. I'm delighted today to be joined by my colleague Xavier Duran, who's our global MBA director, and I'm also joined by members of our MBA recruitment team. You'll notice just before I pass over to Xavier for him to introduce himself, you'll notice that everyone in the audience is muted with their cameras off, but this is an interactive session, so we do highly encourage questions throughout. You can use the question and answer section at any point for questions, and Xavier will direct you to the chat function as well. So in specific parts, he will be asking you to put some answers in the chat function as well. And yeah, without further ado, I'm going to pass over to Xavier, and we will be here to also to answer some admissions questions at the end. So yeah, without further ado, over to you, Xavier.
Thank you, Louis, and good afternoon to everybody, wherever you are in the world. It's a pleasure to be speaking to you today. As Louis said, my name is Xavier Duran, and I am the Global MBA Director, and as such, I look after our portfolio of professional MBA programs here at Alliance Manchester Business School. So that is mainly our global MBA and also as pathways of our global MBA program, our global executive MBA, and then it as well our global finance accelerated MBA for those of you who might be holders of finance or accounting professional qualifications. So I happen to also be an academic in the program. Unfortunately, I don't get to teach as much as I used to years ago because I don't have as much time. But I'm involved in the delivery of one of the modules in our MBA programs, that is the first part of strategy and competition. So a course that looks at economics of strategy and the concept of game theory and interdependence. Nonetheless, in this session today, what I want to do is simply just to give you a bit of an overview about our portfolio of professional MBA programs. In essence, our global MBA and our global executive MBA. Give you a bit of an understanding of what an MBA is about and what are the key features of our portfolio of professional MBAs at Alliance Manchester Business School, as well as giving you an opportunity as well to ask any questions that you may have. As Louis said, we've got two functionalities here for you to communicate to us. One is what we call our question and answers section. So if you have any question on any issue related to our MBA programs or any specific individual question that you might actually have, Louis and Nan and Ekaterina perhaps later on will be able to be answering your questions right away, or indeed will be able to collate some of the common questions and ask them at the very end of our session. And I will be using the chat box as well at some point during our session. So towards the end, I'm going to get back to a member of the recruitment team for them to give you a few notes on the admissions process and fees and all that sort of thing before we actually then address you again at the very end of the session to answer any questions that you may have. But I don't envisage the session being longer than 1 hour altogether. So if this allows me to move, just to start off and give you a bit of an overview of Alliance Manchester Business School and the University of Manchester as an institution that in essence is the guardian of our global MBA and our global executive MBA. University of Manchester is a large university. It was actually established, this is actually not completely right. University of Manchester was established in 1824, as all our collateral mentions. It's actually Alliance Manchester Business School that was established in 1965. But in any case, before I speak about the business school, the University of Manchester is the largest campus-based university here in the United Kingdom, with around 45,000 students and in excess of 12,000 staff between professional services and academics. It's a world-leading higher education institution, and it's literally leading on research in many areas. We've got 3 faculties, so we have faculty of engineering and material science. We have a faculty of biology, medicine, and health sciences, and then we have a faculty of humanities, in which we house Alliance Manchester Business School, along with a number of other humanities schools. But Alliance Manchester Business School in itself, so our business school, again, is also one of the largest business and management schools in the United Kingdom. We were one of the first two business schools created in this country back in 1965, when we were created alongside London Business School. So London Business School was to be created down south, and Manchester Business School at the time, so we had LBS, and MBS was to be created up north, and we were given award-bearing powers, and we started offering our MBA programs soon afterwards. So we've been in the business of delivering MBAs for a long time. A couple of numbers here, mostly related to our latest position in the Financial Times rankings in 2023, on issues anywhere between our coverage of ESG in our curriculum, our final positions at the European, world, and UK levels. And then there's other numbers here that are actually quite interesting around the fact that we are a school with global presence. So obviously we are based here out of Manchester, but we have international centers from which we actually service our global MBA and our global executive MBA all over the world. So we have a center in Shanghai, another one in Hong Kong, another one in Singapore, and another one in Dubai, from which we recruit and host workshops for our global MBA. So in essence, we've got two intakes for our global MBA and our global executive MBA every year, one every January and every July. And combined as a network of centers, including Manchester, we tend to take anywhere between 300 and 350 students every January and every July. Very global presence. And those centers that we actually have, again, are not just a room in a hotel where we decamp our teachers, not at all. We have our own facilities with our own full-time staff at our centers, so our students can actually very often visit our centers, even when they're not attending workshops, and we host them for different types of networking events and alumni events, and we actually support all our wider communities internationally. We are a triply accredited business school, so we're accredited by the Association of MBAs, but also by the EFMD that gives us accreditation at European level, and also the AACSB, which is in essence the US counterpart to the EFMD. Very large business school, as I said earlier. We've got over 280 research and teaching staff. So again, as I said earlier, we're one of the largest business schools housed in one of the largest universities in the United Kingdom. We are in the last Research Excellence Framework, been noted as the second in the UK for research power. And along with that comes a number of research centers and institutes, mainly around areas such as sustainable consumption, or we also have a productivity institute. We also have a work and equalities institute, and so on. So quite worthy and societal causes that we tend to focus our interdisciplinary research on. Anyway, focusing perhaps more at what you are most likely interested in, which is looking at our MBAs. First of all, and perhaps before I speak about our global MBA and our global executive MBA, I'm going to ask you to please share with us in the chat functionality. So you might see actually there's one that says Q&A, another one that says chat. I would like you to write down in the chat box what you think an MBA is about. Not why you would like to do an MBA, but what you actually think an MBA is about. Come on, don't be shy and share your thoughts in the chat box. What is an MBA? Beyond the obvious, because we know an MBA is a Master of Business Administration. Type it in, come on. What is an MBA? Anybody? Got some shy people there. I see some people seem to be using the Q&A function rather than the chat box. It doesn't matter, so I'll read it from the Q&A section. So Tina here tells us it's about efficient networking. Brian tells us the chat function is disabled. Please enable. Doesn't matter. So I'll just read out your answers here anyway if it's disabled for some reason. Just use the Q&A functionality. It's okay. So Samir tells us it's a place where you can learn, meet, and network with people and faculty. That's absolutely right. Just use the Q&A functionality, and I'll read your answers. Jeffrey here tells us that it allows us to manage people and assets. Absolutely. Anything else? Daryl tells us that it's about developing networks and is a generalist management knowledge enhancement program. Absolutely. Elemesios, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name right there, is telling us that the MBA is a graduate degree that provides us with theoretical and practical training for business or investment management. David Bosley tells us that the MBA provides industry leading through processes, so to better develop our understanding. Anna tells us that it's a window to professional global business learning and networking. Adefoyeki tells us that the MBA enables professionals to enhance skills and to be more marketable. Absolutely. Sidalia tells us that it allows us to learn how to make executive decisions and to network. Tina again tells us that it's about professional and personal growth. And Brian again tells us that the MBA is about networking with staff and students together as we try to train as better managers and leaders. Absolutely. You might wish to keep your answers coming. Usha, for example, tells us there is a platform to enhance our knowledge, expertise, and networking on business administration to develop our careers and to perhaps try to climb to more senior roles. Absolutely. Okay. But notice one thing that many of the answers that you have provided us have in common is that idea about networking. Absolutely. The MBA will allow you to network with like-minded individuals. And quite interestingly, it will allow you to network with individuals that perhaps are quite different to what you tend to be used to. So if you are an engineer, you possibly spent a few years studying for your original degree with people that perhaps were quite like-minded. There were people with an engineering mindset. If you worked in finance or in banking or you studied sales, whatever it is, you tended to be surrounded with people with a similar professional background. It might well be the case that in your own organization, you're speaking to people from lots of different backgrounds. So you're speaking to people in an operations capacity or people in finance or in HR. And again, they all have their quirks. They all have their different prism or different way on how they look at the world. But ultimately, they all belong to the same organization. And to an extent, there's an organizational culture that prevails in terms of the way you look at the world and the way you actually speak to each other or you engage with each other. All these breaks down in an MBA. In an MBA, you're basically welcoming people from every walk of life. This is what we call a post-experience qualification, where people come literally from finance, from engineering, from medical background, from IT, project managers, people that come from a sports background, people in business development, people that come with a sales role, literally people that come from absolutely every single professional background and from lots of different organizations and countries. And we actually put you together to try to get you to share the way you actually look at the world. And this is actually one of the most enriching parts of the MBA, the fact that you're actually engaging with people that look at the world in totally different ways that you do. In any case, and perhaps from a more general perspective, the MBA is what we call a broad business and management qualification, a generic business management qualification. And I'm not using these words, broad or generic, in any pejorative sense whatsoever, quite the opposite. What's happened is that the vast majority of cases, for all of you, if not in all cases, you all come with some area of expertise. You've actually been in an organization where, or many of you will have been in an organization where you've possibly been pigeonholed, where you've actually been siloed into one very, very specific function or one very specific role. If you're an engineer, you may have actually been climbing the ranks of the organization, perhaps in a very technical role. Likewise, if you're actually looking at finance, or if you're actually in medical practice, whatever it is that you have been pigeonholed into one very, very specific niche. And sometimes you will actually find it very, very difficult to break away from that glass ceiling where you've been pigeonholed in. The MBA, rather than making you an expert on anything, is actually trying to get you out of that expert area. The MBA gives you that passport to let others know, you know what, yes, I'm an expert in one particular area, but I could also be a generalist. The MBA gives you that broad, that general knowledge and skill set to understand how organizations work. So usually the curriculum will start mainly around the very first year, looking at all different parts of an organization. So what operations management is about, what marketing and sales is about, what HR, organizational behavior, is about, finance, accounting. So we try to look at all the different functions, all the different departments, all the different roles within the organization, and we expose you to all of them. And we don't make you an expert on any of them. You will not become a marketer. You will not become an accountant out of an MBA. But you will be able to understand what is that people in all those different areas within the organization do. You'll be able to understand what are the key tools and the key language that they actually use, so that you can be in a room with them and understand basically what they're speaking about. And only once you've had an understanding of how the organization works and the interplay, so how we actually connect the dots, you will then be exposed to a capstone strategy course. Strategy course that will actually give you that helicopter view to look at the organization from above, and will allow you to, in essence, look at strategy at the higher level. So in other words, looking at how we can actually mobilize the infrastructure, the resources of the organization at all different levels to try to get the organization to rally and the people to rally behind one specific strategic approach to, for example, launch a new product, or diversify into a new market, or transform our organizational culture, or indeed transform the way we actually run our operations. Whatever it may be, strategy is actually looking at the organization more holistically and more synthetically. Okay? But this is the very key point about an MBA. If you want to keep specializing more and more and more in one very specific area, you'll go on to be doing a master in science, in marketing, or in finance, or in operations, or in economics, or you might even go on to do a PhD to become even more and more and more expert in a smaller and smaller and smaller area. The MBA takes for granted that you're already an expert professional in one particular area, and rather than funneling you in, we're actually funneling you out, so that you can have that ability to understand how organizations work. And in addition to understanding how organizations work, we also equip you with a skill set that will allow you to run and thrive within a context of uncertainty in any organizational setting, right? So in that sense, we tend to prevail skills such as trying to get you to develop your interpersonal communication skills, your confidence, trying to get you to become more critical thinkers, have more creativity, group work, project management, time management, and so on. All those are very, very critical to becoming a leader in any area, and indeed as well are very much so part of what an MBA is about. An MBA, therefore, is aimed at ambitious individuals that are actually looking to transforming their careers, simply because they actually want to break away from that glass ceiling, and they want to be able to go on to be looking at bigger things. In other words, they actually want to get that synthetic view rather than being pigeonholed in a very, very small area of expertise. And the MBA is, in essence, a qualification that is well known the world over. It's a qualification that's been there for a long, long time. Actually, the first MBA was developed by Harvard back in 1908. So it's been around at this stage for 150 years, much longer than the vast majority of qualifications, and is indeed seen as the business management qualification par excellence, known the world over by applicants and by employers alike. Anybody that is looking to doing an MBA, anybody that is looking to recruiting MBAs knows what they are to expect out of them. In other words, knows what the MBA will provide them with in terms of personal and professional growth, and for an organization, how an MBA can actually allow them to improve their operations, their strategy, their finances, and so on. The only issue is that whilst the MBA has been around for a long time, since 1908, as I said, there are a large number of MBAs out there. Yes, fair enough, in 1908, Harvard comes along with a great program, a generalist post-experience qualification on business and management education, the MBA. But this is originally offered only on a full-time basis. Things have changed a lot since. So certainly, particularly in the United States, in the 1950s, 1960s, the popularity of the MBA started a proliferation of new delivery formats. Originally, there was those traditional executive MBAs that tried to replicate the experience of a full-time MBA for students that were not ready to give up their own careers. In other words, that were not ready to put their life on hold for a couple of years to do a full-time MBA, giving up their jobs and so on. And those traditional executive MBAs, therefore, were actually based around one location where students were actually asked to attend 3 evenings every week, or every weekend, or indeed a couple of days every month. So those traditional executive MBAs, and there's still some around, tend to see a total of anywhere between 70 and 90 face-to-face days in terms of commitment on the part of students. But there's been a very large proliferation of other delivery formats, particularly since the internet and online provision has allowed us to have different levels of blends. And by blends, we mean a combination between face-to-face and online delivery. So we have what we call traditional online MBAs. They're offered 100% online. They can be great if your objective is basically to put 3 letters at the end of your name and that's it. And yeah, there might be a bit of learning that comes with it, but perhaps they don't tend to do as well when it comes to the opportunities to network, the opportunities to perhaps meeting other individuals, and perhaps sometimes the dropout rates tend to be quite high because people don't tend to have that support mechanism when you're actually seeing your peers face to face and you're actually propping yourselves along. We therefore have things in between what would be traditional executive MBAs offered part-time and traditional full online MBAs. So we have different levels of blends. So on the one hand, we have what we call the traditional distance learning MBAs that are offered on a modular basis and usually will get you to come on campus at the very beginning of the MBA and perhaps for a residential halfway through the program, simply as checkpoints, the very beginning to induct you into the program and then halfway through the program just to make sure that you're on track. But that face-to-face is kept quite minimum, so they tend to lean quite towards the online delivery side of things. And then we actually have the more traditional part-time MBAs, which similarly enough to traditional executive MBAs, tend to focus on very frequent face-to-face delivery, so either weekend release or during a couple of evenings every day, every week, and so on. The only problem with those is that they tend to cater for a very local population, because if you're actually offering them very frequently, you cannot expect people to be flying in every week or every couple of weeks to take a couple of hours here and there of class. And this is where we actually differ quite a bit ourselves here at Alliance Manchester Business School. So in essence, what we do with our Global MBA program, and indeed as well with our Global Executive MBA program, is we try to create a blend where we, wherever possible, get you in the class to meet academics and peers as much as possible. Yet, we don't ask you to be putting your life on hold for the MBA in the sense that we're making you very, very frequently come into class. So our Global MBA, for instance, has a default position of 29 face-to-face days over a period of 2 years in this part-time MBA. Now you might wonder here, why is it saying there is between 11 and 35 days? There's plenty of flexibility. So there's the ability for you, for example, to take online electives or take workshop opt-out assignments and so on, if you want to reduce the amount of face-to-face you want. But there's some electives where we actually offer more face-to-face than the usual 3 days that we tend to have for the vast majority of our workshop. So there's quite a bit of variability in that sense. But the point is that we actually always try to condense the face-to-face workshop residentials into a number of residentials of 3 per year, so that we separate them out every 6 or every 3 months, depending on which residential you're actually taking. And you don't have to basically be coming onto campus every second week or every week or every month or anything like that. Now, of course, one of the trade-offs here is that whilst we actually tend to focus on the residentials which we actually put together, usually we put around 2 workshops together in one residential. When you come to those residentials, the experience is incredibly, incredibly intense. So in essence, in a workshop, you would usually get around 24, 25 hours of face-to-face contact time with the academics and with your peers. And on top of that, because we tend to focus a lot on debate, discussion, contextualization, we tend to keep them quite small. So whilst our cohorts around the world are huge, we never put you in a class of more than around 30 people, so as being able to make sure that everybody contributes and everybody participates very, very actively. The workshops are incredibly busy and intense. So when you come to those workshops, you will be meeting, you're going to be having a mix of lectures, a mix of discussions, debates, exercises, group work, and so on, usually culminating with a group presentation on the very third day. But you will be working with the academic between 9 and 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the evening. But then in the evenings, it's quite likely you're going to be staying back with your group preparing your presentation for the very third day. And you're going to be staying until quite late in the evening, realistically. So it's quite an intense experience, but one which our students absolutely adore and really, really, really enjoy. And we hear it from our graduates every July and every December when they finish, that say it was tough, but it was so rewarding. And if anything, say, well, I miss the workshops and all the buzz about just getting a deliverable done very quickly and going for pizzas and going for a quick drink before we actually reconvene and do all this work and so on, is a really, really rewarding experience. Another of our key features in our Global MBA, and certainly our Global Executive MBA, as I said earlier, is our global presence. So as I said earlier, in addition to being able to deliver our Global MBA and our Global Executive MBA from Manchester, we have our international centers in Hong Kong, in Singapore, in Shanghai, and in Dubai, from which we can also deliver our programs with quite a lot of infrastructure and support, indeed, our alumni communities and our student body communities. So we have very, very, very well engaged student and alumni communities anywhere you are in the world. We've actually been in the business of international education for a long time. So, for example, in Singapore and in Hong Kong, we've been delivering our Global MBA, or the predecessor of the Global MBA, since 1992. So basically 30 years now at this stage. We were one of the first to be out there delivering international education face to face. Of course, you have an opportunity to use those centers. So those of you on the Global MBA would be taking your core workshops out of your center of registration. So if you register with the Manchester Center, you will be coming to Manchester 3 times a year on year 1 and at the beginning of year 2. And then you take your electives either here in Manchester or anywhere you want in the world. And we actually encourage you to go and take elective workshops elsewhere in the world to get you to engage with other cultures and other ways of looking at business and the world. And we promote it by covering up to 6 nights accommodation if you take your electives abroad. So that's something that we strongly and actively encourage. So I said, 2 main options. We have our Manchester Global MBA, which can be completed either in 24 months or 18 months. Our standard is 24 months. But for those of you who are holders of finance or accounting qualifications, anything like ACCA, CIMA, CPA, CFA, ACA, and so on, you're eligible for an exemption from our finance courses, which allows you to complete it within 18 months. But generally, we'll be speaking about 24 months or 2 years. As I said earlier, we offer this program from either Manchester or one of our international centers through our blended approach, where you come in campus 3 times a year to take your workshops, and then before and after the workshops, you also are supported on your online learning through online lectures, virtual office hours. There's plenty of material and discussion forums, so you're actually guided by academics every step of the way. The Global MBA is actually aimed at people with a minimum of 3 years experience. But let me point out this from the outset. This is a very, very, very bare minimum of 3 years of professional experience. The vast majority of our Global MBA far exceed these 3 years. And we would genuinely discourage people who are incredibly young. So if you finish college at the age of 18 and you've been working for 3 years and now you're 21, genuinely, we would encourage you perhaps wait a couple of years more, because sometimes you need to be a bit more seasoned to be able to get more out of the MBA, because it's all about sharing your experience and being able to accelerate the experience that you've already had professionally. The Global Executive MBA, or as we call it in short, GEMBA, is an 18-month program, and it's aimed at very, very, very senior individuals. Usually people are already at board level or nearing board level. And whilst it is a bit less flexible than the Global MBA, it gets you to engage with people that are already at a very, very senior level. So it's a very small, close cohort of individuals, usually 20 to 30 individuals that will travel as a close cohort all over the world. So they'll come to Manchester first, then they will be going to Dubai, then they will actually be going to Hong Kong before they come back to Manchester, and then they will take electives anywhere they actually want in the world. So here we specify the fact that they need to travel even for core units, as opposed to the Global MBA, where there's perhaps a bit more flexibility. The difference, however, is that in the Global MBA, we might have more of a wide array of experience. Usually our average age in the Global MBA is around 36, with people that might be in their mid to late 20s, and with people that are up to their 60s. We've actually had a few people in the 60s, all right. And there's people that are, say, at team lead positions, all the way to people at senior and board level positions in our Global MBA. Whereas in the Global Executive MBA, we're looking at an average age of low 40s, and usually people are already nearing or at board level positions. So it is a very, very smaller niche. I'll speak about those programs because they're slightly different. First of all, the Global MBA, and I've already mentioned a couple of bits and pieces here. So 6 residentials over a period of 18 months, sorry, of 24 months, 18 if you're a holder of a finance or accounting professional qualification. It's our largest program. So as I said, we tend to take anywhere between 300 and 350 people all over the world every January. And every July, we have 68 nationalities represented in our latest class. Is incredibly global. And we're looking at, even if we permit entry with a minimum of 3 years of postgraduate experience, in reality, people tend to have an average of 12 years of work experience. They tend to be at mid-management roles, usually when they decide to do the global MBA. They're on average around 35, 36, 37 years old, and usually they have around 6 years of managerial experience. Yet, as I said, there might be a bit of variance. Okay, we've got intakes in Manchester, just as we have intakes in Singapore, in Hong Kong, in Singapore, and in Dubai. Actually, we started intakes in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia as well this semester. And indeed, it's a highly flexible program, because the fact that we deliver to such a large amount of people, that we deliver it all over the world, and that we have 2 intakes every year, means that if life gets on its way, if you need to slow down at some point, you can do so and very quickly pick it up. You don't have to wait for a year or anything like that, because we have intakes very regularly. And because we are, particularly for core units, we're actually repeating workshops all the time. We never put more than 30 people in any workshop, as I said earlier, which means that we have to do loads and loads of workshops. And because we're actually aiming these to people with a very global mindset, or people that are very interested on international mindset, we obviously attract people that perhaps travel with their MBA. So in other words, it might well be that you are based out of London, or that you're based out of Manchester today, but that in 6 months' time or in a year's time, you might be working in Dubai, or you might be working in the Far East. And our program lends itself to be very portable. So you can easily bring your program with you and continue it exactly the way you started it here in Manchester, out of different locations in the Middle East or indeed in Asia. Okay, so very flexible. Let me speak about the course structure. As I said, its default position is that it is a 2-year MBA, except for those of you who might be holders of finance or accounting professional qualifications. And in essence, from the moment that you register into our program, you already have access to our pre-MBA course, which is offered online. But in essence, whilst, for example, for the next intake, the courses will begin on the 1st of January. From the moment that you register, you already receive access to our pre-MBA. And there's a very large set of resources where you can actually start reviewing how you go back to higher education. So anything to do with study skills like time management, how you go about writing essays, how you go about referencing, how you go about avoiding plagiarism, all that sort of things. And then there's also some very interesting foundations of business courses that you can start taking in your own time. Each takes around 3 to 4 hours, and you can, again, pick them up at your own pace. There's one on foundations on operations management, foundations on marketing, foundations on financialization and cultural economy, foundations on accounting, foundations on finance, and so on. They're a great opportunity, because usually people register, and what can I do now? I just want to get ready before I actually start in a couple of months. That's a great opportunity for you to start getting acquainted with some of that material. All these courses have been developed by us, and indeed, particularly foundations of business courses are actually developed by the same academics that will be teaching you from day number 1. So it's a very good way for you to start getting acquainted with business management education. Anyway, 4 main core courses. So one of the courses is called Leading and Managing the Global Environment. Another one is Strategy and Competition. Another one is Operationalizing and Communicating Value. And then you also have a class on Business Accounting and Finance. Some of those courses, particularly Leading and Managing the Global Environment and Strategy and Competition, are divided into 2 parts. So in the very first semester, you would be taking the first part of Leading and Managing the Global Environment, where you're actually looking at a class about the business context in which organizations operate In particular, this course is actually very much so focused on global business transition. So we're actually looking at the transition to a net zero economy and the transition from a shareholder-based capitalist system to a more inclusive stakeholder-based capitalism. And underpinning it all is the fact that our world is financialized. In other words, that far beyond relying on a real economy where we do actually things like we did in the past. Now the world is incredibly complicated and is incredibly financialized. So in other words, it's very much so based on perceptions of stock exchange evolutions, the effects that pension funds may actually have on the way organizations operate or the way managerial teams operate, and so on. Really, really, really interesting critical evaluation of how organizations operate in today's economy and how we're actually going to tackle those big transitions, structural transitions that we're actually going through. The second course that you actually take in the very first semester is the first part of strategy and competition. And in this case, and this is a course that I personally teach in, you're actually looking at an economics of strategy course. And in particular, we tend to focus on the competitive process from a game theoretical perspective. In other words, how interdependence should be built into the strategic decision-making process. Really, really interesting course. And then the third course that you actually take on your very, very first semester is what we call operationalizing and communicating value. In this course, what you actually do is you actually look at what is the interplay between operations management and marketing. Now, the first part of leading and managing the global environment sees you take a 3-day workshop along with one additional day of induction at the very beginning of your program in January. And then around Easter time, you come for 6 days of workshops. So 2 days for the first part of strategy and competition, and then 4 days for your operationalizing and communicating value. Then on your second semester, starting next July, you would be taking a number of courses. So you would be taking a 6-month course, the second part in essence of leading and managing the global environment. In essence, a course on organizational behavior, leadership, and human resource management. So here you're actually looking at leadership, you're looking at group dynamics, you're looking at organizational culture, transformation management, all that sort of thing. And then you're also taking a capstone course on business accounting and finance, right? So you have around September time next year, so 2024, you will be taking a 6-day workshop residential here in Manchester, 3 days for leading and managing the global environment part B, and 3 days for business accounting and finance. And it would be around November time, so halfway through that semester, that you would then start off with a course that strands into your second year. So that second part of strategy and competition, where in essence, you're looking at your capstone strategy course. You remember what I said at the very beginning of your MBA, you're looking at all different areas of business and management, how organizations work, operations management, marketing, economics, you're looking at accounting, finance, HR, all that sort of thing. And then only once you've actually covered them, you're able to put them all together to get that helicopter view that I spoke about in terms of a more traditional strategic management course. So around January time 2025, then you would be taking your workshop residential that would take 4 days of strategy and competition part B. Now, during that third semester, you will be taking 2 of your electives, so typically 6 days, 3 and 3, which you can actually take either here in Manchester or anywhere you want in the world. And then you would also be starting the online part of your live business project. And it is then your fourth semester when you actually then finish with your third elective, and then indeed as well, where you actually finish the last 6 months of your live business project, the supervised phase, where you as part of a group of students are actually really tackling and mobilizing the skills and the knowledge you've acquired throughout the MBA to try to give strategic recommendations to a business, or indeed, if you're doing a more desktop-based suite of research, you're actually basically looking at one very particular industry analysis or or perhaps a managerial effect that that has caught your eye, that you're really interested in. Once you actually finish your MBA, once you actually get your 3 MBA letters, you don't cease your contact with us. As it happens, we actually give you then access to one additional MBA elective offered on a CPD basis, which is free of charge. So in essence, the vast majority of our students complete the MBAs saying that that's absolutely amazing, that they've learned a lot, and that they would love to take more and more and more electives. So once you finish the MBA, we'll allow you to take 1 additional elective. And then obviously we continue our relationship with you as an alum, because we tend to run quite a few alumni networking events, either here in Manchester, at our centers, or indeed at other destinations like London. We tend to be there quite often, or indeed places, I don't know, like Beijing or Tokyo or Abu Dhabi or Cairo, or places where we don't have a center, but where we actually attend quite often to meet our student and alumni communities. I also spoke about another option, which we call the GEMBA, or the Global Executive MBA, which was aimed at the particularly senior level, that allowed students, say, for example, already at board level or very, very near board level, to complete the program within 18 months. So these students actually travel as a close cohort of individuals to different destinations. And indeed, they actually come first to Manchester in January, then they will be going around March time to Dubai for around 6 days, before they actually then go to Hong Kong in October time next year to take another 6-day residential, before they come back then in January 2025 to Manchester for a strategy and competition workshop, and then they take electives wherever they want. As I said, we're aiming at people of substantial experience, so they tend to be in their low 40s, with a minimum of 12 years of managerial experience. And we have scholarships available for our global executive MBAs that you might want to explore. Slightly different structure than our standard global MBA. So start again with our Manchester MBA preparation online from the moment that they register. And indeed, they also have leading and managing the global environment, which is divided into 2 different parts. But rather than taking a class on economics of strategy, they're actually taking a class on the digital economy, focus quite a bit on artificial intelligence. And those of you who are not doing the Global Executive MBA can take this class as an elective anyway, so that's not much of an issue. And also take the class on business, accounting and finance, and then a GEMBA exclusive class on the reflective executive that is aimed particularly at people at this level. It's a course that actually takes 1 year long, starts in Manchester with 2-day residential, which continues then into the 2nd year with a 1-day residential. So these GEMBAs would actually come in Manchester for their initial induction, 3 days of leading and managing the global environment, same as our global MBAs, and 2 days of reflective executive. Would then go to Dubai to take the digital economy and business, accounting and finance, 6 days, and a bit of GEMBA plus activities, so networking and extracurricular events. And then in their last semester, they would be going to Manchester, first of all, to take, I forgot to mention here, obviously in the 2nd semester, they go to Hong Kong to take leading and managing the global environment, part B, and operationalizing communicating value, same as our global MBA. But they take it as a close cohort in our center in Hong Kong. In their 3rd semester, they'll come back to Manchester to take a 1-day closing workshop for the reflective executive, and same as our global MBA strategy competition. And indeed as well, they start their project, which rather than being the live business project is the business inquiry, slightly shorter. And it offers also 1-day face-to-face briefing. And then they take 2 electives, not 3, only 2, wherever they want in the world. But obviously, they also get a chance to get an additional elective once they complete the MBA. So with that said about our programs, I'm just going to pass it on to one of our colleagues. Luis, I assume this is going to be you who's going to guide you through fees, discounts, scholarships, and other administrative issues that you might actually find quite useful. And once Louis is actually stopped with his bit, we'll open it up to a few questions that you may have of me or indeed of himself. So Louis, over to you.
Yep, thank you very much, Xavier. As Xavier's mentioned, this slide gives a bit of a flavour of the fee information. I am going to say just before we come on to questions and answers, and there's a few. We've had a few questions come through about potentially this session being recorded. So this session is being recorded, and we will share that with you following the session. We will also be reaching out to everyone on this webinar in terms of you've been able to have a one-to-one consultation with either myself or with Nan or someone else in the marketing recruitment team. So I'll be sharing that we'll be reaching out via email, as well. As you can see here, in terms of fees, so you're looking at 31,500 for our global MBA program. We do offer an early application discount for that program, which we are open now for our January 2024 intake, and that discount is a 10% discount, which is shown there. And the deadline for that discount will be the 16th of October. So you have until the 16th of October to take advantage of that discount. And again, if you want to have, because it mentions there about the potential corporate discounts on offer as well, if you'd like to have an individual conversation based around potentially, looking to source some sort of funding from your organization or the corporate discounts we have available, I'll be very, very happy to do that after this webinar as well, which we can do during the follow-up. And as it mentions there, our global executive MBA is 41,500, and we do offer scholarships for that program up to 25% of the full fees, which are all merit-based. And again, for any further information in terms of applying or about fees or how those fees are paid, very, very happy to do that. The fees are paid in installments for the program as well. So for our global MBA, that is done in 4 equal installments over the 2 years. And for the 2 18 months of the Finance Accelerated and our Global Executive, that's done in 3 installments. I think there might be another slide, Xavier, potentially. There might not be.
Yeah, there is, yes.
Yeah, cool. Okay, yeah. So this is the application process. So this is applicable to all of our programs. There is a slight difference between the global and the global executive in terms of the application process, which I'll go through in a moment. So once you've obviously visited the website and you identify the program which you're interested in applying to, whether that's the Global Finance Accelerated, or our Global Executive, we then obviously, if you want to do a profile review, we're very, very happy to do that. Once you've done that, you'll then complete on an application form for the program that you're interested in, which will be followed by the admissions test. So the admissions test is actually our in-house admissions test, which we call the Manchester admissions test, which is a 45-minute online test. So we don't require the GMAT or GRE across these programs. We allow you to take our internal test. And then from there, the key difference between, as I mentioned, where it says the final decision will be made in a few weeks, there is a slight difference in that on the global executive, we do invite you to interview for a short interview as well before that decision is made. And usually your decision is made within about 2 or 3 weeks of you submitting an application. So it's a relatively straightforward process. And again, at any stage, we are very happy in the marketing recruitment team to either review profiles, to set up one-to-one consultations, and it will be, like I say, following up. So you have all of our contact details, and you'll be able to either send your CVs or have those communications. So as Xavier mentioned, I think that's the final slide. In terms of the application process. Yeah. Okay, yeah. So in terms of, I know Xavier mentioned it throughout the kind of program in terms of the levels of experience you have, but those minimums on the global MBA, minimum of 3 years postgraduate, average of 11 to 12 years. If you don't have a degree as well, we do have a route with a minimum of 6 or 7 years of professional experience without an undergraduate degree. We can offer a route onto the global MBA. And again, as when Xavier was going through the slides before on the executive MBA, we're looking at around 10 to 12 years as a kind of minimum of senior management experience for the Gemba program. And for the finance accelerated, again, I know Xavier mentioned it, but just to reiterate that, for those individuals who have accountancy qualifications such as CIMA, ACCA, etc., we do offer that route. And again, you can get in touch with our team to check your qualifications to see if you do qualify for that route. So first of all, we're going to open up to questions for Xavier. So if anyone has any programs questions, and I'm obviously very happy to answer admissions questions as well. But yeah, any questions from the audience? I've just had a question from Rachel. This is an admissions one, Xavier, so I'll just take this really quickly. So you're looking at the July intake because you're currently doing a PhD. Will the discount still be available? So yes. So we open the intakes every sort of 6 months or every half year. So we'll close for application for our January 2024 intake around December. The final application deadlines will be around December, and then we'll reopen for July of 2024 in January, and we will have the discounts, and we'll announce all of those deadlines when we open that intake as well. So yeah, thank you very much for that question, Rachel. Any program questions, guys? Any questions to Xavier while he's here? I'll take this other admissions question, Xavier. So there's no cost to take the Manchester admissions test. There's also no application fee to submit an application for the global MBA or the global executive MBA. In terms of preparation for that Manchester admissions test, in terms of before you start the test, there is example questions where you can do preparation. Preparation is not necessary for that test. There's 3 sections. There's a numerical section, there's a logical section, and there's a verbal section. But you can prepare, and like I mentioned, there's no cost to take that test as well. We have got. Okay, sorry, Xavier.
Sorry, yeah, no, I noticed that there's a question here. Whilst general course utilizing varied delivery mechanisms, has this MBA focus of content evolved to account for development of emerging markets and technologies? When was the last refresh of content? That's actually a very, very good question, or set of questions. Indeed, yes, the MBA itself, and that is to do with our MBA, or indeed the vast majority of, how would I say, serious MBAs out there. So the vast majority of our competing MBAs, they're built to be very fit for purpose, and they tend to be incredibly agile programs. So say, for example, we tend to run course reviews every single semester, which means that we actually refresh and update our curriculum every single semester. May that be via updating our anything from what we actually cover. So for example, I was mentioning digital economy. We used to have this course as an elective initially for our general global MBA, where we tended to cover loads of different issues about the general economy, anything from disruptive technologies to platform ecosystem strategies and issues, for example, of fintech. But now we've actually, over time, and particularly in the last semester, evolved this course a lot more towards AI, because it seems to be incredibly important to the business world. Whilst we've actually then trying to refocus our portfolio of tech electives with different focus on, again, same thing, platform ecosystem strategies, an elective now on blockchain and fintech, another elective on managing disruptive technology, another elective, for example, on digital marketing. So we tend to kind of very often refresh and update our curriculum. Also, for example, we use what we call organic or living case studies that are constantly refreshed. Or for example, if you join our programs, in the very first class that you will be taking on leading and managing the global environment, what you will be asked to do is to take one of the topics that was covered at the last World Economic Forum as a basis of your presentation. So we tend to continually review not only our elective portfolio or even our structure, but the curriculum very, 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 very often. Yes. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you, Xavier. We've had another question come through from Daryl. Is the final capstone project performed on real business cases in industry, or is it going to be more research driven as a desktop type of project?
No, actually, you guys are up to telling us what you want to do. And what happens is the live business project is a 1-year project. The very first 6 months, we actually equip you with research methodology training, leading then to the in essence preparation of a proposal. And we actually allow students either to do things like a feasibility study for entry to a new market. We have a few entrepreneurial projects. We actually have many that tend to look at due diligence, for example, entry strategies to a new market or diversifying to new products. And there might be some that are perhaps a bit more desktop kind of research, because it's ultimately out of interest for one specific industry or for one specific phenomenon. But I would say that around 90, if not 95% of our projects tend to be incredibly applied in nature. And usually what will happen is that our students will actually find a real client to work with, either the employer of one of the organizations where one of the members of the LBP is working in, or indeed they might actually sometimes even find somebody who's completely independent they want to do a piece of strategic work with for. So yeah, it is possible to do desktop research, but it tends to be very, very, very seldom the case. So I'd say 90 or 95% of our LBPs are usually incredibly applied with a real organization.
Thank you very much. We've got a question about the cohort here, Xavier. How is the cohort? Is it very focused on one specific area? Like they've used an example LBS with finance and banking, etc. Yeah, how's the cohort shaped?
No, incredibly diverse. So yeah, I mean, other MBAs, as might be noted there, might focus particularly in specific areas. Ours is not. Ours is incredibly generalist, and we make a point out of it. From the outset. So, for example, when we were created back in 1965, as I said, it was LBS down south, it was MBS up north. LBS were actually created from the outset with a very strong focus on finance and banking, perhaps driven by the geographical position of London. Manchester, on the other hand, was always to be created as a more generalist program. So we tended to focus a lot on more behavioral side of things. And that's where we actually have our Manchester method as the very, very unique and very idiosyncratic method of delivery of our program that tends to focus a lot on group work, a lot on reflection, and indeed a lot as well on getting your hands dirty with real businesses, with wicked problems, basically, with uncertain and dynamic situations that are versatile and can apply to every single industry. So we tend to attract, traditionally, yeah, we have quite a few people that come from finance and banking, but we have also quintessential to MBAs, lots of engineers and project managers and operations managers and all that sort of thing. But increasingly, we're getting more and more people that come from healthcare space. We get actually a lot of clinicians. They're starting to do MBAs, but we have people that come from pharma, people that come from med tech. We actually have a lot of people that come from business development backgrounds. We have professional sports people. We have people that come with an IT background, scientists. Basically, we have people from every single walk of life, really.
Perfect. Thank you very much. We've had a question from Samir saying, how is the accelerated finance program different from the regular global MBA program?
Yeah,
Is it purely the qualification?
yeah, no. So it's simply those of you that come already with professional finance or accounting qualification, as I said earlier, CMI, CCA, CPA, that sort of thing. We give you an exemption for our 30 credit business accounting and finance. In the normal global MBA, that is the largest course that you actually take in your second semester. And by giving an exemption and a discount as well to reflect it, we're allowed to compact the duration of the program into 18 months. But other than that, you're still receiving the exact same qualification in the Manchester MBA.
Perfect. And I've seen another question here come through about the global MBA and fitting it around full-time work. How do you see that? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, this program is designed for people that are part-time students. So everybody, and I'm not going to say the vast majority, no, everybody in this program is doing it on a part-time basis, and it's designed to be part-time. Now, that doesn't mean that it will be a lot easier. It's not. It still requires you to put quite a bit of work. Generally, we speak about a commitment of anywhere between 12 to 15 hours on average per week. But if you do the sums, obviously, when you come into workshops, and you come 3 times a year for those workshops, when you do a workshop, you're already doing perhaps between time with the academic and then time where you're staying back with your peers to prepare your assignments. Possibly you're spending around 12 hours a day for 6 days. You do the sums. Those very intense periods perhaps mean that there are other periods in the semester that are much lighter. As it happens, before the workshops and after the workshops, we give you guided readings. We actually give you week by week guidance as to where you should be, and we give you plenty of support through online lectures, virtual office hours, access to our academics 24/7 with our discussion forums and so on. But you actually set the pace. While we guide you through it, you're actually completely free to manage your time before the workshop. So long as you come prepared with everything you should have done before the workshop, you actually own it. So you might find yourself doing very little work for 2 weeks and making up for those 2 very light weeks doing extra work. In generally, you will be working quite hard during workshops, just before workshops as you prepare, and indeed as well, just before you complete the semester and as you prepare your final individual assignment generally.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Just conscious of time, and I see there's a few admissions questions that I'm just going to quickly address here. So Katrina is asked, is there a GMAT score required? So as mentioned, we don't require a GMAT or GRE score. You can take our internal Manchester admissions test. And again, very happy for anyone to reach out for a one-to-one consultation to go through that in detail as well. Just having a quick look to see if there's any final ones for you, Xavier. Any final questions from the audience? Nope. Oh, we've got a raise. Someone's raised their hand. If anyone's got any final questions, if you type those into the question and answer part, please. Nope. Okay, great. Perfect. Thank you very much, Xavier, for attending today for that session. That was great. Thank you everyone in the audience as well. And as mentioned, we will be sending a recording of this session following today. And also we'll be reaching out to everyone that's attended. So if you do want to send your CV or you want to book in a consultation with either myself or one of the members of the MBA marketing recruitment team, we're very happy to do that. So thank you very much, and thanks. Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.